Hi, I'm Sahana. I'm gonna introduce my capstone project, which is a coaching tool for emotional resilience. Being emotional resilient is quite of importance today more than ever, with constant input, constant stimulus. When we are bombarded by expectations, burnout is often seen as a not just as a possibility but as sometimes inevitable. So my project is to like basically empower us with all of those tools and small things we can do to make sure that we are not only thriving in our professions but we are also like happy in our lives. One of the reason I basically chose this tool is a personal one. So towards the end of last year, I'm sure most of you have seen Inside Out too. There's a movie scene where like joy comforts anxiety. Joy basically lets anxiety share all of her worries and then unpacks them one by one, makes to make her realize that some of these worries are unfounded or not of concern right now. That's basically the core idea of CBT techniques, which is what my tool explores. Why did I choose Gen AI? That's actually a good question as well. Um, Basically, the current CBT workflows are very rigid. Instead of instead of basically keeping up with like users' mindset or like where they are at the moment, the user basically have to deal with this rigid tools and try to figure out which one basically pertains to how or can help with how they are feeling at the moment. But instead of like that, the more with help of all of the personalization power the Gen AI offers, we can move the paradigm uh, in a different way. Instead of like users trying to understand which tool uh, they should follow. The user should be able to interact with the system, and the system, based on the context it has understood from the user, it basically picks the tool the user should follow. And also, it can pick how deep it can go into the tool. Basically, every exercise has like different stages. Imagine video game. Some stages are like easier, some stages require more reflection. So the idea is that the system, based on the context it has received from the user, can promote the user to a higher stage if it feels that the user is making progress, or basically stays with the current stage. That's kind of the basically gamifying the CBT, if I can say it one way. In my project, I'm going to basically share how I use the structured outputs, how I use the agents, function calling, grounding, and briefly touch upon the observability that has helped quite a lot in like understanding how the agent thinks. Um, First one, let me just basically quickly share the architecture before like jumping into the different things. This is the kind of the agent architecture. The product which we will see towards the end of the notebook is basically a chat box. The user converses with the agent, and the agent on the other hand has access to like the last conversation it has had with the user, and also like couple of custom CBT tools. Here we target around like three different exercises. Based on the user's preference, the agent calls a particular tool and basically gets the prompt or the question it can ask the user to guide the user through the exercises. The As I mentioned earlier in my presentation, I use LangGraph, and this is basically how my LangGraph looks like. There are only two important nodes. It's quite flat. The first is the pre-process node, and second is the React node. Let me first jump into the pre-process node to share what it basically does. The pre-process node or the router node, I call it both two different ways. The router node is responsible to basically let the user know what excess, basically let the agent know what exercise the user is interested in, and what is the stage of the exercise. The best way to make sure that the router node tells the agent the information we need is like enforcing it by using a structured output. This is basically the out. This is basically the format we ask the router node to return in. Like I mentioned, the router node should basically tell the agent which CBT exercise it needs to focus on, and also what is the current stage. Like I mentioned, the exercises have like different difficulty level. It tries to basically detect the current stage based on the previous conversation. On the topic of previous conversation is how I'm going to introduce the one of the most coolest things we see here, the semantic history. It's very important to have some kind of a tool to keep history, because agents at the moment are stateless. They cannot store information. So by semantically caching the conversations, we basically empower agents with making sure that they have enough information to move forward. And second, like I mentioned, the basically the router node, it gets the necessary information and calls the React node. The React agent node, based on the input it has received from the router node, the CBT exercise, the stage of the exercise, it calls the relevant CBT exercise node, CBT exercise function. Here we have declared around like three different CBT exercises we are focusing on. The idea is that the React agent will call each of these functions with the stage and get a prompt for it. The reason we are basically hard coding the prompt over here is because we want to make sure that the user gets consistent experience by using the tool, and it's also grounded. The experience of using this tool is grounded on like predefined knowledge, so that again making sure that the user has consistent information and also the agent doesn't hallucinate, which is not a much of a big problem with the models of today, but it is still a good practice to keep in mind. And yeah, finally the React agent basically retrieves the prompt, and one of the retrieves the prompt and shows it to the user. One of the most interesting design choice I made is like make sure that all the nodes, the graphs are all under the single class. This is something that I've learned from someone, that having this class mindset helps me to like plan ahead what kind of variables I need to create, and also what the structure should look like. And finally, there is this method called pre-process message, which is what our chat box will call again and again. It will supply basically the current message that's passed by the user and the previous chat history. Like I mentioned, the LLMs or the React agents have no memory, and by keeping this chat history, we are empowering them with the knowledge that has happened before. And finally, I use Gradio as my chatbot. Let me get started. Hello, I feel nervous. I don't know if I did a good job. What happens? I will carry on with demo and see. Yeah. So basically, you get the point, right? Like it keeps on asking different prompts, and according to the what stage I am in. And most importantly, we hard code only three prompts over here is because we don't want to go deep, go deep into any exercises. We just want to like guardrail, um, like how deep we want each exercise experience to be in. And also, another important thing is these are all LLM calls. So just basically containing this helps to ensure that this doesn't become like too expensive. And I'm just gonna wrap it up with few conclusions. Yeah, one of the most I believe couple of like innovative ideas in this project is grounding. Basically, with help of like prompts and like hard coded prompts, you're making sure that the agents don't hallucinate. Um, and it's also guaranteed safe experience for the user by focusing on only three exercises and like three stages each. It helps the React agent to stay efficient and like doesn't make unnecessary calls. And finally, the semantic caching, making sure the conversation is carried over. For example, when it asks me, when it says that I feel nervous, I don't know if I did a good job. What it happens if you don't follow these thoughts? It is basically understanding that I've already had this conversation before. Despite that, every single message I make is a flow through the graph by keeping in this chat history. What we see over here is how we ensure that the agent basically keeps up with what's happening right now. Thank you so much for this opportunity.